Hello again everyone, Khalo Awesome here, and in today's episode we will be rescuing Kerbals. First we'll be grabbing Derby from low Kerbin orbit. Second we'll be grabbing Madney from low Kerbin orbit. And at the same time, in the same trip, we'll try to grab Melman Kerbin from low Kerbin orbit. And as an extra bonus, if we can get a fourth, we'll grab Jebderd Kerbin, who's stranded in orbit. His orbit is not low orbit. We'll have to get his separately. So first, let's get the 3 Kerbals in low Kerbin orbit. And we're gonna make a small ship with room for 4, the pilot plus 3. So we can grab the 3 Kerbals in low Kerbin orbit first. Make sure to have the heat shield and the decoupler for re-entry, because I sometimes forget that. And 3 parachutes should be enough for this size. That should work. All right, now to propel this thing, we got 2 fuel tanks, and which engine should we choose? Looks like the spark is not strong enough, doesn't have enough thrust. I'm gonna go with the Terrier on this one, I believe. Yeah, the Terrier should be good. So we'll have 2 T400 fuel tanks and the Terrier for the space. That should be just enough for the orbital adjustments. Now to get us into orbit, let's build the rest of the rocket. Add a couple fuel tanks, and now which engine should we use to push us up? The Bobcat or the Skipper? Well, with the Bobcat, let's see here, in the vacuum of space, the Bobcat engine gives us 5,500 delta V and 1.06 thrust. Not enough. All right, what about the Skipper? If we use the Skipper instead, we get more thrust. The Skipper gives us 1.48 thrust to weight ratio and about 3,000 delta V, which should be good. All right, now just to make sure we get a nice acceleration, add a couple boosters. And that should be good for the rocket. We'll add a reaction wheel to help us steer and turn in space. And now a final touch-ups. We need the solar panels, because I'm not forgetting those again. And a battery to hold a little bit extra charge. Probably don't need it, but just to be safe. Be careful not to block the door if you're trying to put on multiple batteries. But I'll only use one for this one, so we're okay. Having some lights will make the ship easier to spot when we're transferring Kerbals from ship to ship. And to give her some experience, we're going to ask Valentina to help us with this mission. Let's go. All right, this is our launch site here, and we're going to target Madney's craft first. We're going to wait until she's a little bit closer to the space above the launch site so we can try to meet her when we get into orbit. Let's put our stages in the correct order and head off. All right, so we got some good thrust, making good acceleration, control is reasonable. We have to do all the control manually since Valentina has not unlocked any of the maneuver controls, but should be okay. Angling at about 45 degrees now to get a nice orbital curve. Our high point, our apoapsis, is at about 91,000 right now, so let's go ahead and make the rest of the orbit. We need to make our periapsis, the orbit low point, above 70,000 as well. We maneuvered it up to 75, or at least planned it up to 75 kilometers, so it should be good. Let's time our burn, and here we go. And it looks like it's working out pretty good. And there's our sloppy orbit. All right, let's try to clean that up just a little bit. Now, my piloting here was very sloppy, but I managed to fix it up in the end. Notice here the maneuver periapsis is 75 kilometers. However, the actual periapsis is only 56 kilometers within the atmosphere. We have to fix that. Make sure this says orbit here if you want your actual orbital information and not your maneuver information, so be careful with that. All right, so let's get this fixed. So thrusting, 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 but what did I do wrong here? Well, let's see. First, I forgot to check which way I was going. I just hit the gas and I was not pointing prograde. Also, the nav ball is showing the target data, not the orbital data. Don't make those mistakes. Now, if you burn retrograde while tracking the target, you will match the target's speed and orbit. However, I was actually only looking at this periapsis data here for the orbit and didn't notice the nav ball was giving me target information instead of orbit information. All right, but now that I got that figured out, it's time to plan a rendezvous path. Okay, so if I do the maneuver here, the intersection comes closer. However, my maneuver takes us back into the atmosphere. Yep, 50,000 kilometers puts us in the atmosphere, no good. All right, what if I maneuver on this side? Well, if I try to slow down here, our orbits come a little closer, but that doesn't bring us together because we'll be at the same speed. We're already at a distance apart. We need to be able to close the distance between us. So I'm going to use my wider orbit, let them orbit faster. If you can't get a good intersection, just go ahead and orbit the planet a few times. Now they're getting farther away, so I'll just let them circle around and catch up to me again from behind. All right, so our next intersection is over in the purple on the left, and if we speed up a little bit, we can bring those together. They're pretty close right there. The separation between the two ships at that point will only be 3.2 kilometers. So let's turn the nav ball towards our maneuver node and burn for the 1 second time. We'll have to burn slowly, burn carefully. Okay, this should bring us pretty close to what we planned. Let's cancel our maneuver and see what we got. The actual separation is 4.7 kilometers. Close enough, that's pretty good. So let's warp to just before that point. And now we can do some fine tuning. Now that we have the target tracked in the nav ball, we'll point towards retrograde. So we'll slow our speed down relative to our targeted ship. That means we will be going at the same speed in the same orbit. So we can keep the same distance as we orbit each other around the planet. Now that we are almost at the same speed, our distance from each other is about 4.2 kilometers. To get that a little closer, I'll point towards the target here in the pink, slowly burn, and this brings our planned separation closer. As you can see, it's dropping here. We can get it pretty close. 1.8 kilometers is pretty good. Can we do a little better? All right, now 0.8 was pretty good, but I think if we push any more, yeah, it's going to take us a little farther away. So we'll do 1.9 kilometers. That's just fine. We'll work with that. All right, so let's warp to the point just before this intersection. And our ships are getting closer together. And again, we just repeat the process. Make sure our nav ball is pointed towards target, point towards retrograde, slow down the ship so that we match the target's speed and orbit. And that way we'll be at a stable distance from each other. All right, 0.4 is pretty good, good enough. We can work with this. Maybe I can get it closer. So pointing towards the target again. And I can actually bring our separation to 200, 100 meters. Yes, very good. One more closer to that. Now within 100 meters, it'll be a real easy transfer from ship to ship. So again, point towards retrograde. And slow down just a little bit to maintain a steady distance. There we go, almost pretty much the same speed here. Okay, time to transfer. So I hit the bracket key to switch to the nearest friendly vessel, exit the ship, and turn on RCS thrusters with the R key and float over. Now another trick to make this easier here is using the nav ball even when you're using the Kerbal. If you keep the prograde marker within the pink target marker, it means you're flying directly towards your target. All right, and now that we're close to the ship, all we gotta do is float carefully to the door, grab it, and board. And one rescue complete. So this is our first rendezvous around Kerbin, so we do get some money and some science points for that. And we have one of our parameters complete. To complete that contract, we need to land back safely on Kerbin, but we're going to pick up the other two stranded Kerbals first. Let's target our next Kerbal and adjust our orbit. So I've expanded the orbit a little bit to slow me down to allow them to catch up, just like last time, and they did, and we repeat the process. Once we're pretty close to each other, I will speed up my orbit a little bit, bring our intersection closer. All right, burn towards that planned navigation. And there we go, 0.3 kilometers apart. Let's warp to a point just before that. And as you can see, we're getting closer. Now I want to adjust my orbit to match theirs. So, point towards retrograde to slow down my ship, match the target speed. 0.1 meters per second is really good. We have a pretty good distance, so switch ships with the bracket key. Grab a little data while I'm here. Exit and float over with your RCS thrusters. When the distance is only about 100 meters, it's pretty easy. And since we match the ship's speed, you don't have to do a lot of chasing. It's a really easy transfer from ship to ship. Now, the way I have my ship set up, we only have two doors. One's used by the pilot, so we have them enter through the other pod, but then we have to transfer them into the crew cabin. Once that's done, we have the two sitting in the crew cabin, and the seat in the other pilot seat is available for our last Kerbal. So let's go get them. All right, expand our orbit again. Fly around until our intersection point gets closer. Now that it's pretty close, we're gonna maneuver to make it as close as possible. We can bring that down from 26 kilometers to, ooh, nice, 0.1 kilometers, 100 meters, very close. All right, we'll point towards the maneuver node, burn, and that brings us to a very close distance, about 200 meters. We can slow down here, or you know what, we can just go for it. Probably make this transfer really quick before we get separated. So, exit and transfer, basically the same routine. Take the science, board the ship, and that's it. We have all three of the low orbit stranded Kerbins in our ship, and we're ready to return. So, nothing to do now but go down, so we'll reduce our speed by pointing retrograde. We have the nav ball this time pointing, we have the nav ball this time giving orbital information. And as we slow down, you can see our path turning in to the planet because our periapsis is also lower. Now in our first attempt, I was not able to keep the ship steady. it flipped around and I could not reduce speed fast enough. This is bad. Even with the parachutes opening at the end, couldn't survive the landing. So we'll try again, make sure I keep the plane in retrograde this time. After boosting as much as I could, ditch that before it gets dangerous and do my best to keep the ship pointing at retrograde. It flips a little bit, but luckily we were able to reduce enough speed to get the parachutes to open in time, and now we can have a safe landing. The 3 parachutes proved to be just fine. We're at just below 6 meters a second, super safe for our landing here in the desert. And beautiful. All 4 Kerbals safe and sound, 3 rescued. Let's recover the vessel. So in doing this, we have completed 3 of the contracts, but there is still the 4th. By completing this contract, we get the money and the science, but also we have 3 new recruits that join our roster, as you can see here. But we have the 4th to go pick up. We don't need the extra crew cabin, so we'll just dump that. And we'll only need room for the pilot and 1 open seat. We can keep basically the same vessel and make it a rescue for 1. Let's go get him. All right, ready, set, go. I said go. Oh no, I don't have the stages in the correct order. Okay, let's fix that. We'll put the rocket and the booster together. The skipper and the boosters together should give us enough thrust, and here we go. Okay, so same procedure as last time. Get into space, make our clean orbit. Then we have to expand out to reach our stranded Kerbin, who is out past the Mun. We'll make our intersection, switch to our last stage of our rocket, and boost out. So along this path, we will have a nice close intersection, then we'll have to adjust our speed and orbit when we get close. And here we are, we're pretty close, so we'll burn retrograde as we are targeting our target ship. So we match their speed. All right, and now, when we come in close again, we'll do our fine tuning. Once we're close enough to each other and our orbits are matched, it's time to transfer from ship to ship. So exit, head over using the RTF thrusters, fly on over for an easy transfer, get in and go back. All right, so we've reduced our orbit, reduced our speed just into the atmosphere at about 35 kilometers. Use the rest of our fuel to slow down. Make sure to dump that so we can keep in the safe orientation and land again for an awesome rescue of 4 Kerbals in total. So rescuing Kerbals, it's pretty easy once you get used to it, and it's a nice way to increase the number of Kerbals you can use without having to spend money to recruit new ones. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial of what you should and should not be doing. Stay awesome, everyone, and see you next time.